One man built Africa's deadliest army in 10 years flat. No guns, no cannons, just spears, shields, and terror. By 1828, his empire stretched further than most European kingdoms. 50 years later, his tactics stopped the British Empire cold. This is the true story of Shaka Zulu's military machine. You'll see the weapon he invented that changed war forever. You'll see the formation that trapped 1,800 British soldiers. You'll see how a clan of a few thousand became an empire. And you'll see why Isandlwana still haunts British history books. Most people think African warfare was primitive before colonization. Shaka Zulu proved that myth wrong in a single decade. He redesigned the spear, the shield, even how men marched. He built regiments faster and smarter than European drill sergeants. His enemies called his formation the Buffalo for a reason. 2 horns, 1 chest, 1 reserve, total annihilation. This formation still gets taught in military strategy courses today. In 1879, that same formation crushed a modern rifle army. 20,000 warriors versus 1,800 British troops with guns. By sunset, over 1,300 British soldiers were dead. It remains one of the worst defeats in British military history. And it happened 51 years after Shaka Zulu died. His system outlived him and still terrified the world's largest empire. So how did one man engineer all of this from nothing? Stick around, because the answer starts with a broken spear. Literally, Shaka's first move was throwing away the old weapon. What he replaced it with changed African warfare permanently. Then he built an army that trained like nothing before it. Then he conquered, absorbed, and rebuilt entire nations in years. Then his tactics reached across a continent and a century. Let's break down exactly how Shaka Zulu did the impossible. Shaka was born around 1787, the outcast son of a minor chief. His parents' relationship was never accepted by his father's clan. As a child, he was mocked, humiliated, and pushed to the margins. His mother Nandi raised him in exile, moving between hostile clans. That rejection didn't break him. It built something colder and sharper. As a teenager, he found refuge among the powerful Mthethwa people. Their chief, Cetshwayo, ran one of the region's best-trained armies. Shaka enlisted and quickly became known for reckless, brilliant fighting. He fought barefoot, refusing traditional sandals that slowed foot movement. Barefoot troops could move faster and strike before enemies regrouped. Commanders noticed. This outsider fought like no one else around him. Cetshwayo promoted him fast, testing him in raid after raid. Shaka studied every weakness in traditional Nguni warfare up close. Back then, wars were more ritual than real. Throw spears, retreat. Casualties were often low. Winners were decided by who fled first. Shaka thought this entire system was a waste of real power. He wanted battles that ended enemies, not battles that just embarrassed them. In 1816, his father Senzangakona died, leaving the Zulu throne open. The Zulu clan at the time was tiny, barely a few thousand people. Cetshwayo backed Shaka's claim and he seized control of the chiefdom. Most rulers at that scale would have stayed small and cautious. Shaka immediately started rebuilding the clan from the ground up. His first move wasn't diplomacy. It was total military reorganization. He scrapped old age-based social customs that limited fighting readiness. Young men were pulled into full-time service, not part-time farming. This created something Southern Africa hadn't really seen before, a standing army. A standing army meant constant training instead of occasional mobilization. Constant training meant his men could fight better than any rival. Neighboring clans still ran seasonal part-time defense forces. Shaka's men trained every day, rain or dry season, without pause. Within a year, the difference in skill became impossible to ignore. Cetshwayo was assassinated by a rival chief soon after. In 1817, that single event left a power vacuum across the entire region. Instead of panicking, Shaka absorbed Cetshwayo's old Mthethwa forces. He didn't destroy defeated groups. He recruited and integrated them. Captured warriors were given a choice: join or be eliminated. Most joined. Loyalty to Shaka often outweighed loyalty to old clans. This absorption strategy multiplied his army faster than birth rates ever could. By the early 1820s, his fighting force had grown many times over. Rival chiefdoms that once outnumbered the Zulus now faced a bigger army. And that army trained harder, moved faster, and fought without mercy. Word spread that surrendering to Shaka meant survival, not slaughter. Resisting him, though, meant near total destruction of your clan. This reputation alone convinced some chiefdoms to submit without a single battle. Others tested him and paid for it almost immediately. In under a decade, Shaka turned a marginal clan into a regional power. He did it without gunpowder, without cavalry, without outside weapons technology. Every advantage came from organization, discipline, and one brutal new idea. That idea was about to change the shape of an entire continent. And it starts with something as simple as the weapon in his hand. Before Shaka, Zulu warriors fought mainly with long-throwing spears. Throw it, and you're unarmed for the rest of the fight. Shaka despised this. One throw, then retreat, felt like theater to him. So he had blacksmiths forge something entirely different, a short stabbing spear. It's called the Ikloa, named for the sound it made in combat. The blade was longer and broader than traditional throwing spears. The shaft was shorter, built for close, brutal, hand-to-hand combat. Warriors kept it in hand instead of throwing it away immediately. That meant fights no longer ended after one exchange of weapons. It forced enemies into sustained close combat, where discipline mattered most. Shaka also redesigned the shield, making it larger and heavier. The bigger shield could hook an enemy's smaller shield sideways. Hooking it exposed the enemy's ribs for a fatal stab. This single shield trick became a signature Zulu combat maneuver. Then Shaka banned sandals completely, forcing his men to fight barefoot. He believed footwear slowed reaction time and dulled ground awareness. New recruits marched over thorns until their feet toughened up. Some men reportedly suffered severe injury during this brutal conditioning. Survivors could then run for miles without slowing their pace. Speed became a weapon just as sharp as the Ikloa itself. Next came formation. Shaka organized his army like a living animal. He called it Impondo Zenkamo, the horns of the buffalo. The chest, or main body, smashed straight into the enemy's front. Two horns, fast younger regiments, swept around both enemy flanks. A hidden reserve, the loins waited behind, ready for any gap. This wasn't random chaos. Every regiment had a specific timed role. Enemies who focused on the chest never saw the horns closing. By the time they noticed, they were already surrounded completely. This encirclement tactic mirrors strategies used by ancient Roman legions. The difference is Shaka developed his independently, without European contact. Training wasn't seasonal either. Regiments lived together in dedicated barracks. These barracks, called amakonda, functioned like permanent military bases. Age-based regiments, or amabutho, created intense unit loyalty and rivalry. Men in the same regiment fought, ate, and trained side by side. Shaka also enforced strict celibacy rules on unmarried regiments. Marriage was only granted after years of proven service and combat. This kept younger soldiers hungry, focused, and fully available for war. It also gave Shaka direct control over marriage as a reward system. Discipline was brutal. Cowardice or hesitation in battle meant execution. Warriors quickly learned that retreating was more dangerous than advancing. This psychological pressure made his regiments fight harder than any rival. Drilling happened constantly, refining formation speed and flank coordination. Messengers and scouts kept regiments cinched across confusing battlefield terrain. Enemies weren't just outfought. They were consistently out-organized. Rival chiefdoms still fought with loose, semi-coordinated groups of men. Shaka's forces moved like a single machine with interchangeable parts. This machine could adapt mid-battle without falling into confusion. Within a few years, no regional army could match this coordination. Speed, discipline, weapons, and formation combined into one lethal system. That system was about to expand far beyond the Zulu homeland. With his war machine built, Shaka turned outward across the region. He didn't just want tribute. He wanted total political control. Neighboring chiefdoms were given a stark choice: submit or be crushed. Many surrendered peacefully once they saw what resistance had cost others. Those who resisted often lost everything within a single battle. Shaka's forces didn't just win fights, they erased entire power structures. Defeated chiefs were replaced with loyalists, answering directly to Shaka. Captured young men were folded straight into existing Zulu regiments. Captured women and children were absorbed into Zulu households and clans. This wasn't just conquest. It was systematic nation-building through war. Historians call this period of mass upheaval the Mafekan, the crushing. It triggered a chain reaction of displacement across southern Africa. Fleeing groups clashed with other communities, spreading conflict outward. Entire populations migrated hundreds of miles to escape Zulu expansion. Some historians estimate the death toll reached into the hundreds of thousands. Others argue colonial-era droughts and famine amplified this crisis further. Either way, the region's political map was permanently redrawn. New kingdoms formed entirely as a reaction to Shaka's expansion. The Ndebele, Swazi, and Gaza kingdoms all trace roots to this era. Some groups adopted Shaka's exact military model just to survive him. Others fled south, colliding with Boer settlers moving into the interior. By the mid-1820s, Zulu territory covered a massive stretch of land. His kingdom stretched across roughly 11,000 square miles. That's larger than several modern European countries combined. This growth happened in barely over 10 years from a tiny clan. European traders on the coast began sending reports back to Britain. They described a disciplined, terrifying force unlike anything they'd witnessed. Some compared Zulu regiments directly to Roman legions in structure. This wasn't casual praise. European militaries respected disciplined coordination above all. Shaka understood optics too, staging displays of army size for visitors. He wanted outsiders to report exactly how powerful his kingdom had become. Internally, though, pressure was building around his increasingly harsh rule. After his mother Nandi died in 1827, his grief turned into cruelty. Reports describe mass executions and extreme mourning rituals imposed on the kingdom. Thousands were reportedly killed for insufficient displays of grief. Crops were destroyed and pregnancies banned during the mourning period. This overreach alienated even his closest allies and family members. In 1828, his half-brothers, Dingaan and Nalangana, assassinated him. Shaka died at roughly 41 years old, killed by men he trusted. His empire didn't collapse immediately. The military system was too embedded. Dingaan took the throne and inherited Shaka's entire war machine intact. The regiments, the training, the formations, all stayed fully operational. This is the critical detail most retellings of this story miss. Shaka didn't just build an army. He built a self-sustaining institution. Institutions outlive individuals, even violent, controversial founders like Shaka. That institutional strength is exactly what the British underestimated decades later. They assumed Zulu power died with its founder in 1828. They were wrong, and that mistake would cost them dearly. 51 years later, this same system faced modern British rifles. What happened next became one of history's most stunning military reversals. By 1879, the Zulu Kingdom was ruled by King Cetshwayo, Shaka's grandnephew. Britain wanted Zululand folded into a larger South African confederation. High Commissioner Bartle Frere issued an ultimatum Cetshwayo couldn't accept. It demanded the Zulu army disband within 30 days, essentially impossible. When Cetshwayo refused, Lord Chelmsford invaded with roughly 4,000 troops. Chelmsford believed spears and shields stood no chance against modern rifles. He split his force, chasing what he thought was the main Zulu army. That left about 1,800 British and colonial troops camped at Isandlwana. Critically, Chelmsford didn't order the camp fortified or circled with wagons. He assumed no serious threat could organize against his position. On January 22, 1879, British scouts stumbled into a hidden valley. Inside sat roughly 20,000 Zulu warriors, completely silent and still. This was the same buffalo horn system Shaka designed decades earlier. Zulu commanders launched the attack immediately, before full preparation. The chest regiment surged straight at the British center, drawing focus. Meanwhile, the horns raced silently around both undefended British flanks. British riflemen initially held their ground, firing disciplined volley after volley. For a while, superior firepower seemed to be winning the fight. Then ammunition resupply broke down under pressure and confusing logistics. Some units reportedly ran desperately low on rounds mid-battle. Zulu losses were also severe, estimated in the low thousands. But the political shockwave landed almost entirely on the British side. News reached London and stunned a public convinced of imperial invincibility. This was supposed to be spears against the world's most advanced army. Instead, disciplined formation and terrain used decided the entire outcome. The very same day, a smaller battle unfolded at Rorke's Drift. There, roughly 150 British troops held off thousands of Zulu attackers. That defense became legendary and somewhat softened the Isandlwana humiliation publicly. But military historians still study Isandlwana as the real turning point. It proved indigenous tactics could defeat industrial-age European armies outright. The Buffalo Horns formation is now studied in military strategy courses. Analysts compare its encirclement logic to ancient and modern doctrines alike. Britain eventually won the wider war by July 1879 at Ulundi. Superior numbers, artillery, and reinforcements ultimately overwhelmed Zulu resistance long-term. But Isandlwana proved something no propaganda could erase afterward. One man's military system, built decades earlier, humiliated a global empire. Shaka never saw a single rifle used against his own army. Yet his structural ideas remained lethal against 19th-century firepower. That's the real legacy, not just conquest but reusable military architecture. Formation, discipline, and coordination outlasted weapons technology for half a century. Few military systems in history have proven that durable under pressure. And it all traces back to one outcast building an army from nothing. Shaka Zulu built more than an army. He built a system. Systems outlast leaders, outlast empires, and sometimes outlast entire centuries. A rejected outsider engineered tactics that stunned the British Empire. Not through better technology, but through better organization and relentless discipline. That's the part history books often flatten into simple footnotes. Isandlwana wasn't luck. It was decades-old strategic architecture in motion. The Buffalo Horns formation still gets studied in military academies today. Shaka's story is proof that innovation can beat pure firepower. It's also a story with real brutal human costs across a continent. The Mafeking reshaped southern Africa's political map for generations afterward. Countless lives were altered by decisions made in roughly 10 years. That's the complexity real history demands instead of simple hero narratives. Shaka wasn't purely a genius, and he wasn't purely a monster either. He was both, and that tension is exactly what makes this compelling. Most military history content skips straight to European battles and generals. Pre-colonial African military innovation rarely gets the depth it deserves. Shaka Zulu deserves to sit alongside history's most studied military minds. His tactics influenced conflicts long after his own violent death in 1828. 51 years is a long time for any strategy to remain lethal. Isandlwana proves it did exactly that against modern industrial warfare. If this kind of deep military history interests you, there's more coming. This channel breaks down the strategy behind history's most overlooked victories. Comment below which battle or commander you want covered next. Subscribe if you want more research-driven history instead of surface-level summaries. Every video digs past the myths into the actual documented record. History rewards people who ask how, not just what happened. Shaka Zulu asked how to build an unbeatable army from nothing. 51 years later, his answer still worked against a global superpower. That's not myth. That's documented, researched, verifiable military history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.